It bears an image on it, ventral, front, and back dorsal of a human figure.
It shows a very faint sort of image of a crucified man. And the crucified man calls us to remember Jesus' death and resurrection.
For centuries, the Shroud of Turin was trapped in a simple argument. Either it was real, the burial cloth wrapped around Jesus after the crucifixion, or it was a medieval fake. People chose a side, and the debate stayed there.
Once he's dead, he's taken off the cross and wrapped in cloth and taken to a borrowed tomb.
Then in 2015, inside an ultra-clean genetics lab at the University of Padua, Professor Gianni Barcaccia and his team examined microscopic material hidden deep in the cloth. They were not trying to prove a miracle. They wanted to reconstruct the cloth's history.
And because of the contact with the body of Jesus, that transforms and leaves a lasting mark on the cloth.
Where it had traveled, who had touched it, and what traces time had left behind. The expectation seemed straightforward. European DNA should dominate if it was a medieval forgery. Middle Eastern DNA should dominate if it had ancient roots. But when the final genetic map appeared, the room went quiet, because the code inside the shroud did not point neatly to one place. It pointed everywhere. The face that appeared in the dark. Long before DNA testing, the shroud had already shocked the world once. In 1898, amateur photographer Secondo Pia photographed it during a public exhibition in Turin. That night, as he developed the glass plate, a clear human face appeared on the negative. Closed eyes, broken nose, beard, bruising, and the expression of someone who had suffered deeply. The cloth itself behaved like a photographic negative. To the naked eye, the image is faint and difficult to read. But photographed as a negative, it becomes a lifelike human face, functioning like a negative centuries before photography existed. No medieval artist could have painted in negative and then verified the result without a camera. That discovery transformed the shroud from a devotional object into a scientific problem. The DNA that shouldn't have been there. Barcaccia's team used sterile microvacuum tools to pull dust, pollen, and organic traces from between the fibers, focusing on mitochondrial DNA, which survives longer and is useful for tracing maternal ancestry and geographic origin. The results were startling. Middle Eastern DNA appeared, with markers associated with Israel, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. Western European DNA made sense, given the cloth's long history in Europe. But then the map widened. North and East African markers appeared, then South Asian ones, then East Asian ones, including signatures associated with China. That was the moment the medieval forgery theory started falling apart. A forger in France could not have intentionally placed credible genetic traces from the Middle East, Europe, Africa, India, and East Asia into one cloth in a way that would still make sense under modern genetic analysis. The DNA was not random contamination. It looked like accumulated contact over centuries, the cloth carrying the biological memory of many hands, many regions, and many lives. A route written into the fabric. Once the DNA was mapped geographically, it aligned with an old route described in early sources. The cloth reportedly moved from Jerusalem to Edessa, then to Constantinople, and eventually into Europe. Edessa was not isolated. It sat at a major crossroads of the ancient world. Traders from Arabia, merchants connected to India, travelers from the East, and pilgrims from many regions all passed through. If the cloth was displayed there for centuries, people touching it, kissing its frame, breathing near it, could easily have left behind microscopic traces. The DNA pattern no longer looked like planted evidence. It looked like history, the pollen that pointed to Jerusalem. The genetics were only half the story. The rest was written in plants. Researchers identified 58 species of pollen trapped in the cloth. Some were European, but many came from the Middle East, Turkey, and regions along the old route through Edessa and Constantinople. Then came the most striking detail. Some pollen came from plants that grow only in a narrow corridor between Jerusalem and Jericho. One species, Gundelia turnfortii, a thorny desert plant, appeared heavily concentrated around the head and shoulders. It blooms near Jerusalem around Passover and has exactly the kind of spines that could be twisted into a mock crown of thorns. A medieval forger in France could not have invisibly applied microscopic pollen from plants found only near Jerusalem. This was not paint. It was a geographic residue, the blood and the signature of trauma. Detailed analysis found human blood, not pigment. Blood type AB. But what mattered most was what was inside it. Scientists detected nanoparticles linked to extreme physical trauma, markers associated with severe dehydration, massive muscle damage, and catastrophic suffering. Compounds like creatinine and ferritin bound to hemoglobin typically appear when the body undergoes intense stress and muscle breakdown. This was not the chemistry of an ordinary death. It was the chemistry of prolonged torture. The blood suggested the body had endured immense violence. Not a single injury, not a quick end, but sustained physical trauma, consistent with scourging, exhaustion, and collapse. Even the unusual red color of the stains was given a biochemical explanation. High levels of bilirubin, released during extreme trauma, can preserve a redder tone in blood. What once seemed like an inconsistency, now aligned with known medical responses to severe suffering. The flow patterns matched gravity, body position, and movement, suggesting a real human form wrapped in cloth, not a painted representation. A painter could imitate blood visually. A painter could not recreate the nanoscopic biochemical profile of a tortured human body, especially centuries before science had the tools to understand what those markers even meant. The test that got it wrong. The biggest objection had always been the 1988 carbon dating, which placed the cloth in the medieval period. 3 respected laboratories reached the same conclusion. It seemed definitive. But later, research uncovered a critical flaw, not in the technology, but in the sample itself. The tested piece came from a corner likely repaired in the Middle Ages, containing newer cotton threads woven into the original linen, possibly dyed to match the aged fabric. The labs may not have dated the original cloth at all. They may have dated the repair. Then, in 2022, a new approach analyzed the molecular aging of the linen itself by studying how cellulose degrades over time. The result pointed much further back, closer to first-century materials from the region of Israel than to medieval European textiles. The famous medieval date no longer looked final. It looked incomplete, shaped by where the sample had been taken, rather than what the entire cloth actually was. The image physics still can't explain. At the center of the mystery is one stubborn fact. No one knows how the image formed. There are no brush strokes, no pigments, no ink. The image exists only on the outermost surface of the fibers, thinner than a human hair, appearing to be a chemical change caused by an unknown burst of energy that no one has reproduced convincingly. The image also contains accurate three-dimensional information, something ordinary art does not do. Details like wrist wounds instead of palm wounds match modern forensic understanding of crucifixion, while medieval artists consistently got that wrong. Taken together, the evidence becomes difficult to dismiss. A medieval forger would have had to create a photographic negative before photography existed, embed authentic pollen from the Jerusalem region, produce real blood-carrying trauma markers, fool carbon dating through a repaired corner, and generate a three-dimensional body image no modern lab can fully reproduce. That is why the DNA mattered so much. It did not stand alone. It joined a larger pattern. And what that pattern revealed was not a simple fake or an easy answer. It revealed a cloth that behaves less like artwork and more like a forensic witness, carrying a trail of human contact, suffering, and history across 2,000 years. If this made you question everything, like and subscribe, because there's a lot more we haven't uncovered yet.